Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, welcome back to the channel, and today on Titan Talk, the Merlin reveal just happened, which is pretty cool. It's got some pretty interesting +1s, and of course, Merlin just a really popular character and all that good stuff, but they showcased him fully in-game on the Titan Talk, so we're going to react to that here. So yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right in. Pretty excited for Merlin, dude.
I'll bring up the handy-dandy laptop here, and
there he is.
We got our boy Merlin here.
It's crazy seeing him in Smite 2. Like,
yeah,
looking good.
Talk to us a little bit about just getting Merlin into Smite 2. What's the process? I know you all have a lot of new features and systems that you can work in with Unreal 5, the gameplay ability system. Merlin has a lot of abilities.
Merlin has a lot of abilities. That's absolutely one of the main functions, right? It's just that when we were getting the idea of Merlin yeah, we're just gonna keep casting things. I love seeing all the different spell effects and everything. Roland's been working really hard, but yeah, obviously
the one looks nice.
He's got a whole bunch of abilities. We didn't really want to go too crazy on that sense because, you know, every time that we port into God, we have to think about what's being redeveloped from the beginning, not just the gameplay side of it, the effects side, the sound effects side. There's so much that goes in to porting in God from Smite 1 to Smite 2. And that goes kind of to his +1s and his features, is that we wanted to make sure that when we brought Merlin in from Smite 1 to Smite 2, we didn't kind of... It's not that we didn't want to go crazy for the sake of crazy, but when you're bringing in a character that already has so much going on, it's almost an injustice to push that too far away. Yeah. Like, just a simple example, and something that people said externally and internally, I was like, wait, what if we did a fourth stance? Right? Like, what would that mean for Merlin? And like,
God, a fourth stance.
Right? Can we do that? Right. Do we want to do it? We have more buttons than ever now, but at
could be doable with an aspect, maybe, though, if, you know, Merlin gets either a full stance or, like, a different stance in an aspect or something like that. You know, you shift it more towards utility or something. But, yeah, I do generally agree with the sentiment that, like, you don't want to make Merlin too much more complicated than he already is. You know, he's already a relatively complicated god just in terms of the amount of knowledge you need to have of, like, all of his different abilities and stuff. He's not the most complicated to play, like, mechanically or anything like that, but he is a very, like, deep design with a lot of stuff you need to learn. So, yeah, it makes sense that they will go with, like, more small +1s for Merlin, I think. Also, they've added this cool new, like, aura on his arms based on his stance as well. I noticed that earlier. Like, he's got like a purple one in void stance, a blue one in ice stance, and then a red one in fire stance, which looks really good.
And scheme of things, and that's actually one of the reasons why we went kind of lighter on some of the +1s, especially for Merlin, is because he's already got a pretty cohesive kit that, in fact, for just taking that example, if you brought in a fourth stance, you'd actually be detracting from the other stances and abilities that are already there, and you're going to be diluting what his kit identity actually is. Like, for example, you know, each one of his stances right now has a gameplay purpose for being there. If you bring in a fourth one, is that going to just be better all the time? Is that going to be, what is the new niche you're trying to fill? It's a fun idea, but it's not something that was really entertaining for too long. So despite any of the technical or artistic channels that might be there, we wanted to make sure that Merlin feels like Merlin going into Smite 2. I know a lot of people even wanted to change the passive and go a little bit crazier there, and we kind of did that, but in a different way. Yeah. So I guess, do you want to try to just talk about the +1 features?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, so the main +1 feature going from Smite 1 to Smite 2, well, you've got the different abilities changing based on stance, but the one thing that never really changed was his teleport, his flicker ability. So now, whenever Merlin uses his flicker, depending on what stance he's in, you're going to see one of those three effects. Right. So in Arcane,
oh my God,
healing a percentage of the recent damage you've taken recently. You're going to see that update in the passive meter, so that's a new element there. In Fire, for a short duration, you're going to be applying the Radiate debuff, which is what we're going to talk about in a second, which is basically just that dot effect. And for Ice, your ability cooldowns are going to be reduced by a full 5 seconds when you're in that stance. Maybe that's a little bit high, but
it
seems like a lot. It seems like a lot, pretty good. But at the same time, you're most...
Dude, this is crazy, man. Heal 30% of the damage you take in the last 4 seconds is already kind of nuts. Like, if you get caught out of position or whatever, you're in Arcane stance, which you generally are a lot of the time for poking as Merlin. Like, Ice stance is decent for poke as well. Fire is the one you go to like, shred down objectives, or if someone gets CC'd in front of you, Fire stance is really good for that. But Arcane is a lot of the time what you will poke in. So if you're just, like, poking at the start of the fight, you get caught out and CC'd or something, just heal off 30% of that damage. And obviously, Ice stance, all ability cooldowns reduced by 5 seconds. The Ice stance 1 is probably a lower than 5-second base cooldown, I think. At least with some CDR, it definitely will be, so you can essentially get a double 1 off with that, and, you know, an extra 2 or whatever. And it is all ability cooldowns as well, so that means it'll just have a 15-second base cooldown on the teleport. It'll also mean your ultimate will have a lower cooldown, so you can switch back out of Ice stance, dude. This is kind of crazy.
Likely going to be using that flicker offensively if you want to do that. So you're kind of sacrificing the defense mechanism and going for the offense. While in Arcane, right, you're sacrificing anything else and you're just trying to go for a little bit more of that heal play. You don't want to do it too early, otherwise you're not going to be able to make use of the actual heal from the damage, right? It's a
I like this though. This is cool.
And then for the Fire, that's again kind of more of an offensive one. You're kind of weaving that in the middle of your fight to keep that dot going from your Radiate.
Nice, sweet. Well, you want to, let's talk about the Arcane one first. Let's see if I can take a little bit of a damage here.
And as usual, it being Titan Talk, you know, we want to make sure that we're let you guys know that there's still some things that are going to be temp. Not everything's going to be in a perfect state, but We're going to keep
See that
sharpening
Yeah,
that.
nice little heal.
To the flicker in Arcane stance.
Yes.
Nice.
And that will be affected by anti-heal. So if you are anti-healed and you see like 100, you're not going to get that full 100 amount. It just as usual, it's going to be affected by that anti-heal number.
Sleepiest Merlin? Is that a...
Sleepiest Merlin is
Sleepiest
I went
Merlin.
to Sleepiest Anubis the other day and actually went pretty
nice.
crazy. Because I knew they had a lot of anti-heal. So otherwise, his abilities that work the same way that you'd expect them to work. He's got this ability 1 that marks the enemies while they're in it. They take the initial hit damage. Again, we're trying to smooth some stuff out, but for the most part, everything does work the way you'd expect there. And then his flicker is that main +1 feature. So if we go to the fire stance, his fire stance has a small +1 that I'm actually still building out as we speak right now. Which effectively is that his radiate does, which is his first ability in the fire stance, does a burning dot.
Cool.
And the idea is that when the combined area of the dragon fire, so that center area that usually reduces protections, also applies that radiate dot, as does his flicker and his elemental mastery. So the idea is that you have this fire stance is the dot stance. It was kind of there before, but now you're kind of playing on that a little bit more. So you can see.
Okay, so that dot that was normally on the 1, now it's just on every single ability in the fire stance. So that's kind of crazy.
That 13 damage. Now if you apply the center area, you're going to see the protection shred. You can see the center. Ymir specifically will take that ongoing radiate burn damage. If you use your 3, so now you're in hands, you can see him like lit up not just with lightning, but also with some extra fire.
Oh, yeah, I see it, yeah.
And for the next, 3 or 4 seconds, your in hands will actually apply that radiate BO1 debuff too. And then finally, his ulti, it goes in and out, expands and contracts based on whatever stance you're going to in. You'll see that will also apply that radiant debuff. So the idea is...
It's more of like a burning effect, which is what you would expect, I guess, from fire.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, it's very on theme. I like it.
Now, the number's obviously going to be lower because of it, right? It's not the same old BO1 damage, but you're going to be having it spread throughout the kit.
Right.
Or at least that stance of his kit.
All right, and now we are in ice stance. So if I use my abilities here, and
Ice
then I
stance as
flicker,
simple as ever before.
I get my cooldown resets here.
Yes.
Pretty quick.
Yep, 5 seconds there. So you're basically with even the tiniest bit of CDR, you're most likely getting your a double frostbolt.
Oh yeah.
And just in general, the stances, it's still pretty simple. Your 2 is applying that stacking slow, which plays off of the 1, which does bonus damage off of slows. Of course, it'll do bonus damage off of any slow, but your 2 is the one that facilitates it, or your 4 technically facilitates it the most.
Yeah, you could easily double cast the 1 even without any CR.
Yeah, it feels good.
And then if you get Mirrodin, then you can triple frostbite.
Yes, exactly.
Triple.
So
it's looking good
kind
though.
of coming in with those 2 main +1 gameplay features. The flicker one being the most important one, and then like we talked about, his passive is still his passive. I know there are a lot of people who kind of wanted to see that get the +1 feature, but I actually thought that the flicker almost deserved it more because it was just kind of that singular, simple ability that we could emphasize and play around with in unique ways that kind of ties into each one of the stances of his kit, while the passive itself, it's there to weave in your extra spells, your lightning stance in a way. It was never meant to be pushed too far into the forefront of his kit.
Yeah, and I like the
That being said,
+1,
it
man.
was something
That's
that
good.
I wanted to play around with, and we can talk about it for his aspect.
Yeah.
However,
Are you guys ready to get
are we going to talk
pretty
about
silly
it?
with it?
Okay,
Is
we're
there
gonna
anything
get
else to
silly.
talk about on base Merlin, or like?
Well, I want to give a shout out again to the tech teams and the
They said this is going to be pretty crazy. They said on a previous Titan talk that if this Merlin aspect goes through, it's going to be absolutely nuts, and I assume that's what they're going to talk about here.
our teams. Merlin's not a simple character.
For sure,
Even when we were
yeah.
talking about his abilities, like each one kind of seems almost simple by themselves, but there's so much interconnectivity. There's so much work that had to be done just in the idea that he's switching between these different stances, and the amounts of, like, for example, his basic attacks. Like if you just fire his projectiles, they're themed to the different stances. The hit effects are themed to the different stances. There's a lot of different, like even the outro and the intros of the ulti, because if you don't have any points put into it, you don't do the explosion fields, and then that needs to be themed to the different stances.
Yeah,
There's
a
a
lot of
lot
stuff to
that
think
goes
about.
in to the triple stance swapping, that while we may have had a little bit of the tech before that from like Uller and even Aladdin Lamp and stuff like that, there's still even more that had to be built in for Merlins.
And let's answer a couple of just questions about base Merlin
Yeah,
before we move
absolutely.
on. What is the number below the elemental icons? That is how much you will heal when you flicker while in Arcane stance.
Oh, that's
which is
tracked?
the,
That's good to know,
Amount
yeah.
of damage, 30% of the amount of damage you've taken in the last 4 seconds. What other ones were there? Does the flicker cooldown in ice stance also reduce the cooldown on the ult 5 seconds?
Yes, it does.
It does?
Yeah, that's
It,
kind of
it
crazy.
only just doesn't do itself.
Oh, it doesn't do itself.
And, yeah,
Okay.
I'll get back to that in a little bit too.
There was a question of, I thought gods were not coming with aspects. So we are planning to put a Merlin aspect in this update, but the Merlin aspect will not be available on the first day of the update, because we feel like when we do that, it is less exciting, and we'd
Yes.
rather add it either a few days later or in the second week of the update. We haven't decided exactly when yet.
I think that's
but we
fine,
will
to be
adding
honest.
the Merlin aspect later in OB6.
I generally agree with this kind of like thing where like don't release gods with aspects for the most part. You know, if they have a really cool idea that's very unique and it's like a completely different playstyle, maybe. But I do think a lot of the time they do kind of just detract from like the base kit seeing any play if the aspect is too strong and vice versa, and it just kind of like overshadows it a little bit. Whereas like we can have a week with Merlin, get all hyped about it, and then his aspect releases a week later and it's like a fresh new Merlin. Like I think that's probably a better way of doing it, to be honest.
Oh, and I wanted to give a special shout out because even though someone mentioned in chat, I did recall and I didn't forget. It is actually Sinfo's birthday today, so I wanted to wish her happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Sinfo.
And well, we love Sin, but also because when she's a massive Merlin fan. I know she's been always asking about when Merlin's gonna be in the game. She even has a really awesome Merlin tattoo that I got at Worlds one time, and so a super shout out there. So happy birthday to Sin.
Sweet. All right. Well, I'm gonna bring us
thank
back
you,
to
T-Dog.
Cams while I prep Merlin's aspect that we can talk about.
So
Aspect time.
this
Clumsy's
aspect
laughing nervously.
is
What? No.
one of the crazier things we've done in Smite 2. And
It's fine.
I think it's I think this is another one of those like the power of UE5 moments and the power of the gameplay ability system, because like I don't want to overhype it, but like this would not have been I mean, maybe it would have been doable eventually in Smite 1.
10
but like, you
stances,
just kind of
maybe?
had this crazy ass idea and you went with it, and like very quickly you were able to
Yeah,
start
so
playtesting it.
I want to give a shout out as well. So absolutely, the UE5 system and the tech behind Merlin was a massive reason why this aspect could even come to be. But also, again, a shout out to Nick on the programming team. He was just like, so full clarity, he was just like, I want to work on it this weekend because it sounds fun and I just want to do it and we can get it done. And then he did it and it came in on the Monday and we play tested it. And it was like, we had some things to smooth it out, but he just had the passion to be like, you know what? Let's do this.
Let's just
like,
do it, you know?
Yeah, because I talked about it before, like his passive and some basic attacks and some ulti ideas. I had some like small, really simple, just could work and will be useful all the time aspect ideas.
Right.
And then I brainstormed this crazier one, and I was actually streaming. Shout out to plugs to the Clumsy stream. Yeah, I do it like once a month. I think I find it funny.
Self-plug,
I find it
right?
very
Yes,
funny.
It's fine.
Yeah, so and then the streamer was talking about it a little bit, and they didn't realize that like I wanted to do this idea, and then the fact that they even kind of came to it naturally, I was like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's
Right.
make it happen. So
I will bring up the laptop.
if you hover over-
and I will
There's a
hover
lot of
the
hype, dude. It better be
aspects.
crazy.
We'll just read it, you know?
they even helped me come up with a name, aspect pandemonium.
Elemental Mastery has a reduced cooldown, and each time it's used, a random stance is selected with 2 random primary abilities. Flicker will always persist. Using Elemental Mastery provides an intelligence buff. Okay, so a reduced cooldown, and each time it's used, you get... So what, you could get like Void 1 and Fire 2 or something? Oh my god, dude, this is insane. There's got to be some really good combos there, surely. I mean, you probably don't want Frostbolt from the Ice Stance without the slow from the 2. But like, what about being able to like combo the Fire 2 into the Void 2 and like keep them in there or something? There's got to be some crazy combos with that.
Elemental Mastery has a reduced cooldown, and each time it is used, a random stance is selected with 2 random primary abilities. Flicker will always persist. Using Elemental Mastery provides an intelligence buff for a short duration. So, Clumsy, what does this mean?
This means you're getting random abilities. We're doing it. We were joking about it, and we're doing it. So you'll start the game, as you see right here, and there are actually a few caveats which I'm going to mention because you can break yourself.
That has
If you're doing
to
that,
be,
you're doing it to yourself. So so you start with the Arcane stance. Everything seems normal, right?
Yes.
Now go ahead and press that 4 button.
All right.
You lucked into your Frostbolts 1 and 2, but you're actually in Fire stance. You can see that through the flicker. And if you keep doing that, you're going to basically be able to switch between the different
so
abilities.
the flicker
I wonder if
tells
it
you what
works better.
base
Let me
stance
just set
you're
myself
in.
to level 20 and level up. That way.
I'll talk about the bricked aspect
There we
component
go.
of that later
Cool.
on. But
And I will just put on reduced cooldowns. Although Elemental, actually no, I'm not going to do reduced cooldowns. That way we can show off the short cooldown for Elemental Mastery. So I'm going to ult again.
there we go.
14 seconds.
So you are just choosing between
So
a
you got
different one
Frostbolt
and a
and
different 2.
Void 2?
This time you kept your Frostbolt. You're in Arcane stance, but you have your Arcane 2. And
Arcane.
you're
I always call it
basically-
Void.
It's going to be randomizing your 1s and your 2s. You will keep Flicker. That is one of the main things. So there you go. You have the
yeah, so
your
you got the
Arcane,
2.
2 and your Fire 1.
Dude, this is so silly.
And, you know, you could have 2 different 1s. You could have 2 different 2s. You could have the exact same 2 spells you would normally have,
Right.
but be in a different stance. You could have an entirely new composition altogether. So you keep doing that. So you're in Frost stance. You got your Fire 1. You've got your Ice
So
1.
now you can flicker to give you reduce cooldown on your fire one.
Exactly.
Oh.
So that was funnily enough, that was actually a bug, or like that was working, and then I realized when I was working on the cooldown part of Flicker, I didn't only do it to his ice abilities, and I'm like, crap, now I need to do it to his other abilities. So I went ahead and fixed that. So yes.
Dude, this is funny as fuck, honestly. It's probably not even going to be good because it's just going to be so unreliable, but it's funny. Definitely something they could have done in Smite 1 as well, I think. Like, this is definitely something that I think UE5 has pushed the tech forward, like just selecting a random ability, putting, you know, like a second ability in the first ability slot and stuff. I feel like there's got to be some kind of like optimal stances here, though. You know, like if you get like one of the optimal stances with like a really good ability combo, you might want to stay in it for a little longer and kind of keep that for the team fight. It's pretty funny, dude. This is pretty funny. I think it's going to be
those
good.
Flicker aspects, or those Flicker plus ones kind of only matter for base Merlin in those specific ways. Now what stance you are is going to actually matter for the Flicker based on your other abilities too.
Right.
So while you're not getting, you know, you're not randomizing Flicker into a new ability, you're still randomizing the stance you're in, giving you a new Flicker components as well.
Oh, I lucked out. I got the perfect roll here. You know, I'm an ice stance.
It's totally possible. So,
but I think the TLDRs, this is just fun.
This is just fun. This is just wacky. This is fun. There's one other component of it as well, because one of the other goals we wanted to have is that you don't just find your perfect two abilities, or let's just say the meta RNG Merlin
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Whatever it is that's there. So whenever you use Elemental Mastery, which is on a reduced cooldown with this aspect,
and I would say that's like, people are like, but why would you use this? Or, you know, like what's the upside of this, right? Playing against this, it feels like Merlin has his abilities up much more often. You just aren't sure what they're going to be, right?
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It could be something that is really good to, you know, in this situation, or it could be something that's not as good. So you're basically giving up like the choice of what stance, what abilities are best for you, to be able to cast much more often.
Yep. But also, so you can see whenever you use the Elemental Master, you're actually given a new buff of temporary intelligence based on base per level. So that way, if you do find that mixed match of perfect abilities, you're incentivized to swap, because every time you swap, you have a buff in power, a buff in your intelligence. So you don't want to just hold on to your perfect two abilities. You're incentivized to keep playing and
keep
hitting that
keep
slot
getting that
roulette.
intelligence buff, firing the ability, switch again.
Keep hitting the slot machine, dude.
And definitely like play around with this. Let us know how you think it feels. It has been good in our testing. So
So for context, the Merlin cooldown goes from 30 seconds to 20 seconds on base. With the aspect, it's a flat 15 seconds in all ranks.
Oh, 50 to all ranks. Wow.
Which you know is pretty good.
but it's even less if you get into ice stance, because then you can flicker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know,
I have
cooldown
Flicker
rate
down
going into
at
that
a
as
10.
well.
Dude.
So I was mentioning that this might not be, you know, the comp Merlin. That being said, I still think it's wacky and fun, and it might be pretty good. Maybe with some on-hit builds or something.
Oh, the mega AoE,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. That one feels good.
Sweet. Well, yeah, that is Merlin's aspect. So definitely can look forward to that a little bit later on in open beta. How is chat feeling about it?
I'm never going to use base Merlin, true gambler in me. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. If I'm playing in ranked or something, maybe I'll play normal Merlin, but I think I'm just going to go RNG Merlin for shits and giggles too. Like, this is like assaults the god, you know?
Does it, it does reset the cooldown of an ability if you roll it again, correctly?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Sorry.
No, absolutely.
and-
Oh, okay. So the caveats, though. Wait, I feel like I'm going to say this incorrectly as well. So I need to remember ignoring the level 1 aspect of you're on Arcane 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Let's say assume you're on completely random abilities. You could be on ability 2, right? Like you have 2 different ability 2s. When you rank that up, you're ranking up the ability 2. You're not ranking up the slot. So for example, if you have Fire 2, and this is just how it works, it has just never mattered until now. If you have your Fire 2 and your Arcane 2, and you rank up your first ability, you're ranking up ability 2. So that way, if you press your ulti again and you get 2 1s, you will not have your 1s leveled. Because you're ranking up the ability 2, not slot 1. The reason why that's very important is specifically at level 1 and maybe technically level 2. If you're level 1 and you immediately put like just a rank into, let's say again, you're 1, and then you switch for some reason and you're left with 2 2s, you now no longer have any abilities except for your ulti. You have to wait.
You gotta wait 15 seconds.
That's really fun.
Roll again.
So
But
that's
on the flip side of things, you could get 2 1s. Like you could just sit there rolling in the fountain until you get 2 1s or 2 2s, and your level 1 wave clear is going to be insane because you have 2 abilities. So it's kind of like flip sides of it. You could brick yourself, but you could also have 2 abilities at level 1 when every other god in the game doesn't have that. Except for, I guess, normal stance switches, but they would be 2 very powerful abilities. Merlin's abilities are, like, very, very powerful. They give him a lot of wave clear. Now, that's funny as fuck, though, dude. Merlin looks really great, like, base kit-wise. I like his +1 a lot as well, and that aspect is just going to be really hilarious, man. I'm looking forward to that. They've absolutely cooked with this one. They were 100% in fire stance, but let me know what you think down below of this crazy Merlin design. I'm a big fan, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.